Welcome back. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. And today I've got a guest called Cecile. She's lovely, bubbly, vibrant, and irrepressible. She's been part of Patterson Program Support, now called Rheumatoid Support, for a long period of time, where she inspires others with overcoming not just challenges with her inflammatory arthritis, but all sorts of external pressures that we all face in life, from different social, work, and all sorts of areas. So she is an incredible human being, and I've invited her on several episodes so that we can compartmentalize several topics that are really important that she has got some great insights about. And so prior to recording, we've listed some really important topics that we're going to cover over the next several episodes of the podcast. And today we're going to meet Cecile. She's in the Netherlands. She's going to talk about how, first of all, she developed this disease and worked through some of the challenges with the disease, and talk with focus around prednisone. It's such a both a great drug for giving you instant pain relief and a lot of pain relief, but it also can have a lot of serious side effects when it's used long term. So prednisone and Cecile's story is what we're going to focus on in this episode. So Cecile, thanks so much all the way from the Netherlands. How are you today?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be there and to be the one on the podcast. That's a lot. I'm doing very good. I already had my Bikram yoga session this morning. Already biked around 20 kilometers, so I'm all good.
Oh, that's excellent. Gosh, you've certainly got your exercise duties up for the day. Well done.
Thank you.
And now let's hear about your experience. How did all this play out for you, and how did you end up on this love-hate drug called prednisone? So walk us through and get us to that point, and then let's talk about in detail on this episode how you got off that drug, because so many folks are stuck on it. They don't know what to do, because every time they lower it just a tiny amount, more inflammation returns. Their doctors seem comfortable to keep them on it because maybe no other drug seems to work. I really want us to get into that. So lead us through your story and into the prednisone period of your life.
Sure. So for me, it started in 2017. I was going through a lot of personal stress. I was going through a divorce. And it started with one knee. One morning was so big, I just could not even walk on it. It was so painful. I saw my GP, who sent me to get an injection in the knee. They did some X-ray, couldn't see what was going on, got the injection, and I could walk the next day. Of course, as I knew, after a prednisone injection in the joint. The next month, the other knee. The month after that, the foot. And then one night, maybe 2 weeks after the foot. So every time injection, so I could just go on, but we had no clue what was going on. We took X-ray, I got MRI, nothing was showing up except a big inflammation in the joint. And one night I heard a scream. So I wanted to get up to go and see whose kids was having a nightmare. And actually I could not get up because I was the one screaming in my sleep of pain of my shoulder. So I first went to my GP right after that, telling her I was expecting it was rheumatoid arthritis, because I have 2 persons in my family who have it, and I researched a bit, and it looked very like what they had. But she was sure it was not rheumatoid arthritis because it was not symmetrical. But a week after, I came back to her with both my hands red and double volume, and I was like, okay, now it's symmetrical enough for you. So she sent me to the rheumatologist, and right away we did all the needed tests, and we knew very fast it was rheumatoid arthritis. At the time, of course, I just went where my GP sent me, and I didn't think too much about choosing a rheumatologist. So I was, let's say, faced with the usual behavior in those cases. So I've been told when we had the results, okay, you have this disease. This can only get worse. Maybe we can contain the progression for quite some time, but you need chemotherapy and prednisone. For how long? Well, for the rest of your life.
Mm.
I was really in shock first to be confirmed to have this disease, but also with the attitude of the rheumatologist who was basically telling me, there's nothing you can do for yourself. You're going to take drugs that are going to save your joints, of course, but have also effects which can be lethal. And just accept it and just go with that. And every question I had was dismissed. So every question about the methotrexate was, but do you want to walk?
Huh.
Yes, sure. So it was really difficult at first to navigate, because every time I came with questions, or I was very clearly annoying the rheumatologist. One even told me, I'm so tired with patients like you. Why can't you just take the meds and that's it? I just accept it. So that was a pretty hard time, of course.
Yes.
And the usual approach, medication-wise, in Netherlands at least, is to start people on a low dose of methotrexate, a very high dose of prednisone, around 30 milligrams a day, and slowly over usually 8 to 12 weeks, increase the methotrexate to the maximum, which is here 25 milligrams a week, and decrease the prednisone somewhere between 5 and 10, depending on patients. And the doctors don't see any reason to lower it if everything's okay.
Yeah. So I once described that as a prednisone bridge, where you're bridging the methotrexate until it begins to work. But that bridge can lead to a road, and that road can lead you to the highway to hell. So
Exactly.
the problem is, the problem is that you don't know how much of your improvements when you're on the pair of drugs is coming from the methotrexate as it goes up in dosage versus the prednisone. And when you know that the prednisone works and it's addictive and you develop this emotional dependence on it, the 8 weeks or whatever that you're meant to be on it can sometimes turn into 8 months or years, can't it?
It turned into 2 years for me, actually. So that's it, exactly.
Right. So
yeah, because first I refused to. I tried to go to the maximum methotrexate at first, and I just couldn't go with that at first, because when I reached 25 milligrams, I had this brain fog, it was impossible for me to function. I already had a huge fatigue. I didn't know if it was, of course, the disease or the methotrexate or both, because that can happen. But then suddenly this brain fog, and I just could not understand my job. I would forget everything. I really felt in another dimension. And I told my rheumatologist, I just cannot live with that. That's not an option. So we lowered the methotrexate back to 20. And this is when, of course, the rheumatologist said, oh, okay, but if you do that, you don't touch the prednisone and you stay at 10. So that was the first reason not to touch the prednisone and to keep it pretty high, even for the standards here. So basically, I stayed with that for 1 year and a half. It was definitely not perfect, especially because it took me a very long time before I realized that I could maybe try something else on parallel to all this, another approach. So I stayed basically with those two medications until December 2018. And then I had a lot of stress again. I was moving again, buying a house. And the day after my final move, I was in so much pain, really, as exactly as when before being diagnosed, for a few weeks. And then my rheumatologist told me, unfortunately, it seems that the methotrexate enough is not working anymore. The methotrexate alone, sorry, with the prednisone. So this is when I've been started on Emerald, together with methotrexate, but on a lower dose of methotrexate at first. And Emerald kicked in within 2 or 3 weeks. So I was pretty lucky on that side.
And this whole time you're on prednisone?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in the beginning, I did not even know a reason to quit prednisone because my doctor told me it was safe.
Yeah.
Less side effect than methotrexate. So for them, it's a medication which you can easily go on with without any problem. Plus, I didn't go through the usual side effect of the prednisone because when I started, a few months after I started the prednisone, I changed all my nutrition and I lost 30 kilos. So, of course, I didn't have any of the weight issue that many people go through. So my doctor was really happy to keep me on methotrexate, prednisone for as long as needed.
Yes, so you didn't get the moon face issues and the crazy can't stop eating issues. What about the sleepless nights? Did you have big heartbeats, sleepless nights?
Terrible.
Terrible, right. Okay.
Yeah, I could sleep until 4 o'clock in the morning. And every night, 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, I would wake up and impossible to sleep again. So it's really exhausting on the long run.
Well, I think it's worth just jumping in at this point, and there might be some people watching or listening to this thinking, but what's the big deal? Like, you're trying to focus on prednisone in this episode, but like, I'm taking that drug and my doctor tells me the same thing. Why are we trying to accelerate the efforts on that drug and not the methotrexate or the Enbrel? Why are we focused on prednisone? Excuse me.
Yeah. In my experience, I can see before and after, because I spent 2 years on prednisone.
Mm-hmm.
When I was on prednisone and I was doing everything else by the book. So what I mean is I was really putting a lot of effort on my nutrition, on my sports, and on my stress management. I was also working at the time a lot on my mental health because I was I had a depression, but lots of reason, of course, for depression. So also this tiredness issue caused by the sleepless nights. And I could never feel in my body any healing. I could feel improvement, of course, when you go to Bikram and you can see you do more and you measure your pain and you measure your stiffness. But there was never a point where I could feel, hey, wow, I can take much more of that than before. So I could never see an improvement in the situation of what my body could take, actually, about even if it was more stress or no, nothing was better, apart, of course, the management of the symptoms. When I finally managed to stop the prednisone, because I had to try 3 times to get there, I would say after 3 weeks, the change was absolutely amazing. First, my mood. When I could see when I was really tapping the prednisone for the first time, when I was finally successful, the first weeks without prednisone were very hard for my mental health. I had very dark thoughts. Happily, I knew it was about the prednisone, so I could manage it and just hang in there, knowing that it was just a phase and the next day would be better. Mm-hmm. But that was very important. And then when I was finally, after, I would say 3 weeks, I realized that I could sleep again. And that was huge. Finally, having to use an alarm, that was really amazing. So I could sleep. I didn't have those bad thoughts. I felt, it's very strange, but I felt like a weight was taken out of my mind. Like something was really constantly weighting me down, and it was gone. And after a few more weeks, how I felt in my body was absolutely incredible. Not only I had this crazy energy, because people talk a lot about that. When you move from a regular diet to plant-based, whole food plant-based, or when people start the diet part of the Prednisone program, everybody talks about energy, a boost of energy. And I was always like, I have no clue what you're talking about because I don't have that. And suddenly it was there, but to the point where I was biking 9 kilometers to my Bikram yoga, doing 1 hour and a half session, biking back another 9 kilometers and still finding myself okay, I cannot sit. I need to bike some more. So I'm going to go in the woods and bike 2 hours and then I will maybe be okay. My kids were tired with me. They were like, Mom, please give us a break. No, we don't go to there and that. No, stop. So that was really a huge difference. And then slowly, we during the summer, I was traveling a lot. So there were moments where I could not be exactly perfect in my diet. I was very strict with my exercise and my stress and my sleep because I was doing Bikram yoga everywhere I could by myself because there was no studio around. And I was doing that daily when I was on holidays. But then, I visited a friend in the south of France who was growing himself his tomatoes. Oh, it's 2 years I didn't eat tomatoes and I can't stomach it. But you know what? It's okay. I'm sorry. I need those tomatoes. So I had a big plate of garden homegrown tomatoes and it was absolutely delicious. And I had absolutely zero symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
which was amazing to me. I didn't try that again because I thought, okay, maybe that was also the special ones because they're from the garden, no pesticide, nothing. But that was amazing to feel that. And then I started to see that I could have nuts once in a while.
Mm.
Maybe not every day for sure, but I could have something like that once in a while. So it was really feeling so good. And I really had this feeling that there was some progress going on, that there was some healing happening. I never ever felt that at any point when I was under prednisone. And for me, this prednisone is really some days, well, yeah, when you need to stop hurting because you're in so much pain, there's nothing working, and you just need a break, just for the inflammation to go down and to take over control again, and to give time, so another drug can help you. I mean, prednisone is magic. It's perfect. It's life saving. But this cannot be a long term drug. That's the problem with most doctors. They see how fast it works and are so happy with it that they don't see any problem staying on with that.
Yeah, if your only focus is on symptom reduction with no other consideration, then obviously it's a 10 out of 10. But
Yeah.
where the delicacy lies is with the long-term strategy if we're trying to heal our gut and be healthier and to have less symptoms long-term, then the strategy that I work with people when I look at their current situation, and we've got the drugs, the diet, the stress, the supplements, the exercise. Okay, we look at these things and we say, how are we doing in each category? If I see someone's on prednisone, then that becomes the focus. Our focus is have to get off that drug. And again, the emphasis is on that because of exactly what you've described. The prednisone prevents the healing. It prevents all of the other efforts that we're putting in to having the amount of grip or leverage that we need over the disease. So it causes more leaky gut. It has a ability to make the results of our food testing unpredictable. So instead of having consistent days, one day for some reason, a food that was previously eaten successfully seems to aggravate the body again for people who are on the steady dose of prednisone. And these two things alone are enough to make it a real obstacle to healing. So we got leaky gut and we've got unpredictable days. And we want the opposite. We want to heal our gut and we want consistent, steady, repeatable days like Groundhog Days so that we can then test other things other than the foods even. And so it really becomes, for me, the number one first major milestone when working with someone is to get off that drug, but not at the cost of more pain coming back. Just as your rheumatologist, with the right intentions right at the beginning, it should only be removed if the inflammation suppression that it provides can be substituted with something less harmful. And that could be exercise, that could be the dietary changes, and even if you're on a good diet, can be improved further. That could be with stress reduction, it could be with some seriously strong natural pain reduction supplements, or it could be, in many cases, all of those things and
Yes.
a disease-modifying drug like methotrexate
Yeah.
or a biologic like Enbrel, people use the phrase, I'm only on 5 milligram of prednisone, that's all I'm taking. Well, my response is, well, you're in a lot of trouble, because if you're on that as your major, if that is the strategy that you have for your disease, you will have this disease at the same or more level in the future. In 12 months from now, it'll be the same or worse, and then it'll get worse and worse and worse, because the prednisone makes your gut worse and provides you with an inability to heal. So we have to, so it's a shock for a lot of people who think they're, in inverted commas, only on prednisone, that 5 milligram a day of prednisone is probably the pain reduction equivalent of about 20 milligram a week of methotrexate. That's probably
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of it in terms of pain suppression, it's
I
probably
think so.
something like that. And so they're basically already on a very strong anti-inflammatory medication, and one that is going to cause them to slide. And so we need to be looking at all of those other options that I just mentioned a moment ago. And, you know, when you introduce the Enbrel at the top of the methotrexate, and that's where you're up to in your story, at this point, we all want to hear next that was enough for you to flip it, which it was. You were able to get off it. And we're going to talk about how you did it now, because even it's such a difficult drug to get off that even the methotrexate and the Enbrel doesn't mean that you can just stop taking it and feel great, right?
Definitely not.
No,
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about that.
Definitely. So the good thing was the Enbrel kicked in pretty fast. So I was given the confidence that it was working, because of course, when you start a new medication, you're always worried that maybe it's not going to do anything for you. So this one was working, and I did learn in the past how difficult it was to get off prednisone, because I tried that one twice before then. Once the very stupid way, like, oh, I'm going to start a prednisone program. Yeah, let's stop prednisone 3 days before. Just, no, it's not working.
What, you stopped it right before? Yeah, that's that's like one of my first things in the book is like, do not stop medications before you start.
Yeah. I know.
That's all right.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So then I discussed with my rheumatologist, because he knew I was really adamant about stopping it. And in the meantime, I found a rheumatologist who knows one thing or two about lifestyle medicine and who is really supporting my actions. And he's always so happy to see me try anything he would suggest, which is not medication, even if I totally trust him on medication.
Mm-hmm.
And I often, I would say I always follow his advice on medication, because I know he has the same point of view as me. So all drugs that can help us are absolutely amazing, because they give us room to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his approach too, when people are okay to follow it. So basically the idea then was to taper very slowly. So I would taper the challenge in Netherlands, we only have 5 milligrams pill for prednisone. So you cannot taper 1 milligram at a time. That's just not an option. So we decided to go 2.5 milligrams at a time. I honestly tried even to source abroad 1 milligram pills, but then it would be out of Europe, and it was so difficult to get it in that I didn't go for that. So we decided to go by 2.5 milligrams. So the idea was to take 7 weeks to taper 2.5 milligrams. So the first week, 6 days with the high dose, 1 day with the low dose. Second week, 5 days with the high dose, 2 days with the low dose, and so on. And the week when there is nothing is where we only have the low dose is repeated twice. And then we start again with 2.5 milligrams less as the low dose.
Mm-hmm.
So it took, I was at 7.5 milligrams when we started, so it took quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I could feel very slowly, when I was reducing, a little bit increase of pain. but nothing that would really worry me much. So I was just trying to go more to Bikram yoga, be more cautious with my sleep, with my stress management, be more strict with my diet, maybe cut back a thing or two that I was not sure about. So I was pretty confident I would do it without any problem, and it looked really good. When I finally arrived the week when I didn't take any more prednisone, this is when I understood my pain. Because then it was really, I think it's the worst thing I ever had to do. My pain went so high so fast, and I was still using, of course, Embrel and methotrexate. Nothing changed there.
Mm-hmm.
But my pain really increased a lot everywhere. It was absolutely crazy. I was really scared, and at the same time, my mental health really started to worry me. I was experimenting a lot of sleep issue, and I was experimenting also a lot of very, very dark thoughts. Again, I knew that would be likely to happen, so it was easier to just acknowledge and let it be there and not act on it. But it was definitely scary.
And this is the
And then
time.
I thought,
Times like that is when you really need to have the right support around you. I mean, you're still fresh. I mean, I think when it comes to something like a divorce, fresh is still like 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's just such a massive intervention and
yeah,
severance in your life that, I mean, there's still residual pain from that and disruption from
yeah,
that. But I remember when you were going through this, and Ellen, one of our much loved members within rheumatoid support, she made it clear. She said, "This is the devil's drug. When you
yes,
try and get off it, it will mess with your mind in ways that you can't imagine. So you need to know that this will pass and know that you'll adjust."
yeah,
And all those dark thoughts and stuff, it's real, it's real and it's dangerous. And so,
it is.
um, you know, you got to dig deep to get through that, don't you?
Yeah, and it really helped me to be on the forum for that, because then I knew I could have the support and experience of other people telling me, "You're right. That's the prednisone. So don't let it in. Just see it there, but just move on, because that's the prednisone. It's going to stop." So that's really very important to realize and hear it, and realize, okay, so I'm not going crazy,
Yeah.
or if I am, it's temporary. That's nice. And then I thought, what is the most extreme thing I can do? Because this is so tough. This is so hard. That's really the worst ever I've been when I was in with the rheumatoid arthritis. So,
Mm-hmm.
what are the most extreme measures I could take? And I could think of two. One was, okay, let's go to Bikram 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So even if I have to go there crawling, let's go. And the second one was intermittent fasting with only raw vegan
Yeah.
food. So really not even the baseline, because there is, so basically the baseline, but without any cooked food.
Yep.
and
Yep.
and with some fruits that I was lucky to stomach. So I can always eat like banana, blueberries, and strawberries. Those three ones are my lifesavers, and I can always eat that. So it was this and a lot of salads, and that's all I would eat. And I would eat once a day, a lot,
Yeah.
of course,
Just once a
but
day. Yeah.
just once a day, and with crazy big ham schedule, and of course biking there.
Mm.
When I could bike, some days I just could not, and I had to take the tram. But most of the time I could bike, and it was honestly the 3 hardest week of my life. And after 3 weeks, suddenly the pain was really fading away, but almost at once, compared to the pain release I could experiment in the past with meds, etc. It really melted in a few days.
Mm.
So the pain melting away, this energy burst it was so much that it even scared me a bit.
Yeah.
Because it was really huge. People around me were scared because they saw me in a bad state. Definitely, they knew I was, as they say, playing with my meds, even if I was not self-medicating. But they were worried for me, concerned for me, because for most people, no, that's not a solution to kill yourself at sports and then eat almost nothing and just once a day. That cannot be the solution. And then and now you're a bit crazy and you are always jumping all over the place. What's going on?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it that when we take it to the extreme, we get some funny looks and some
Yeah.
funny comments
Yes.
and
Definitely.
concerns. There's no doubt about it. As soon as you go raw vegan and do what you described, that's when it happens the most. That's when the comments start coming and the concern looks. And I went through that, as you know. I did 8 months of raw because the baseline foods, as we know them from the start of the Patterson program, I couldn't eat anything without extreme pain. And in hindsight, I was probably under medicated, right? So I should have probably been on more meds, because if you can't eat the basic quinoa and buckwheat and salads without being in a lot of pain, you're not on enough or the right medications. That's just not, because
Definitely not.
So I was instead of bumping up the medication, I went raw as well. And for me, that enabled me to stay on the same medications. I did Bikram yoga every day, just as you described. So you and I found the same solution to a serious problem, which is high inflammation, not wanting to go and do further medications and so forth. And it's a temporary thing. Someone asked me, why don't you make the start of the program completely raw? Because I don't want to worry about people who are doing it. I want it to be nutritionally sound and calorically complete for a person and their daily needs. Because raw is just too extreme to be a program. But can we do it if we're up for the challenge on an individual basis, just because we're trying to get through a difficult time? In the same way, intermittent fasting is not a long-term sustainable program. Is it effective? Most definitely. And so doing raw vegan, lots of juicing and stuff, it's like a fasting intervention. It's extreme. It gets tremendous short-term results, but it's not a long-term thing. But can it be effective? Just like it's effective to take a prednisone pill from time to that's effective too. And as we're discovering and sharing in this episode, it shouldn't be a sustainable long-term approach. So, so well done. You got through this tough period and the mental challenges and everything, and came out the other side through a last battle. It's almost like the climax or the finale of a movie where you're up against the devil drug, and it doesn't want to go down without that last fight. It wants to hang in there and swing, and the hero or the heroine has to pull out everything she knows, and she's got to go to her extreme levels to be able to defeat the evil prednisone devil.
Yeah. And so the funny thing was, I had still some pills of prednisone left. And I was really debating at first, should I throw them away or not? And one day I thought, come on, that's stupid, because if you are dying or in your living room, you still need something just to go to the hospital. I thought, okay, I'm going to keep just a few in the closet. But when I was going through this, I knew they were there, and there was like, maybe that's the solution. So maybe just one is just, no, it's not. But you really have this, your brain playing those tricks on you, because that's an addiction, like many others. And you're like, maybe just one. Maybe it's not so bad if I just take 2.5 and, just for one day more. And it's that, But I know exactly how it would have ended if I would just take one. Yeah, I would just be back on it right away. And that was not an option anymore. And also I was lucky because my rheumatologist supported me, and I explained what I was about to do, and he knew it was a good thing to do. He's the one actually who introduced me to intermittent fasting.
Your rheumatologist introduced you to
that kind of doctor. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to emphasize this point, because we're going to have some of our audience say, well, maybe you were negligent by stopping the prednisone. Clearly you needed to stay on that, because as soon as you stopped it, you were in all this pain. But I think the point that we're trying to make here, or the experience that you're sharing, which is consistent to what I've seen with other people, is that there is a whip in the tail that you experience when you come off the prednisone. But when your rheumatologist is on board and you've got these other very strong drugs in your plan already with the Enbrel and the methotrexate,
Yeah.
that if you can get past that sting in the tail, that whiplash at the end when you come off it, that the grass is greener afterwards, and that it can be done, and that once you achieve that and overcome that hurdle, that it therefore becomes easier with everything after that.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because I could really see after that, for example, if I had some stress again that I did not manage so good, of course I could feel it, but not with the same extent as before when I was with prednisone. And a setback can always happen if you have some issues with your diet, or if you have some issues with stress, etc., or issues going to sport. But the length of the setback, the duration, is way shorter now that I'm not on prednisone.
Mm-hmm.
I recover much faster.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really impressive. It's a huge difference. So that's for me, that's really also showing me how important it was to get off. And I was really closely monitored by my rheumatologist because he knew it was a tough time, and he's very available for me. He would react within 24 hours to email. So
it's great.
I'm very lucky. And he gave me, so when I told him about my plan, he said, good, I give you 1 month to see if it's working.
Yeah.
So if you see you don't have improvement in 1 month, we need to discuss again another plan about medication.
Yeah.
I said, if you see improvement in 1 month, I know you will want to stay with the raw vegan and very strong intermittent fasting for a while, but please, let's say 3-4 months maximum, just to really settle and be confident that everything is okay. But then you need to go back to more normal food and have a normal intake again, because this is not the long term.
Yeah.
And he was right in the way that, once it's working and it feels so good, you don't want to take any risk anymore. I didn't want to try any food because I'm good, thanks, I don't need I feel so good, I don't want to, I don't want to risk anything. So it was another step to get out of this stage where I was really saying, no, I don't want to try anything. I'm good there. I want to stay there, and I'm not changing anything. So after 3-4 months, I could reintroduce already quinoa and buckwheat without any issue. But it was more a mindset for me to say, okay, I'm fully sure now that I'm really on a healing path. So now I can move on and I can start again to build it up slowly, but build it up also. It was needed also with winter, because I don't think I could have done again the raw vegan in our very cold Dutch winter. That's difficult.
Yeah, and also, it's also good for audience to understand that you and I talked about recording this topic and your situation some months ago, and we both agreed that it was suitable to wait until you were back onto more of a conventional platform of foods and just more stable, because it's hard to relate if someone's listening to this who is eating more broadly and exercising less extreme and wanting to get off their prednisone. It would be easy to dismiss this as too radical. And so we wanted to wait until you were back onto regular, or at least regular in our community, Patterson Program community, regular foods, a more diverse, cooked and raw plant-based diet that meets your nutritional and calorie needs. And so whilst it still may seem a little bit, a little extreme if you're eating a Western diet, it's by no means extreme for people who are familiar to eating a plant-based diet. And, and so the message is that you suitably got a support of more conventional rheumatoid arthritis medications to enable you to get off the giant destructive painkiller that should not be taken long term. It had a huge kickback effect as you finally stopped taking that steroid, but you hung in there and you did some short-term hardcore interventions with your exercise and your diet to really clear out that the impact of that. And as a result, you're on the other side of that hill, and now you're able to eat in a way that will enable you to heal without the negative effect of the prednisone, the steroid, and that life now can and has already improved tremendously, and that you're now on a path. And I know this sounds like a little dramatic, but really now you can actually just begin your healing journey, because all those 2 years that you're on that steroid, you're spinning your wheels, you're pedaling, but there's no chain on that bike. You're just going nowhere.
No, nothing happens.
And so finally now you don't have someone holding the hands behind your back as you're being punched. You can now swing and make some progress.
Definitely. And to the point, actually, that we discussed with my rheumatologist, and next month we're going to start tapering the methotrexate.
Wow. Congratulations. That's exciting. Yeah.
Yes.
So your blood markers are good. Everything's going good.
Everything's going good. I don't have any episode without knowing
what it was,
without recognizing, exactly, knowing the reason. So now we feel confident we can slowly start. Plus, I was actually quite sick in November and December with lots of lung infection and this and that. And my rheumatologist was like, "Well, look, you're already tapering actually, because you can't even take it." So,
you're referring now.
Sign,
Yeah, you're referring to the Enbrel, because the Enbrel can often be responsible for increased risk of infection. And so
yes, but I also had several episodes of fever, so I had to stop my methotrexate. So I was very low on the. I think methotrexate I had to skip already in 2 months. I had to skip methotrexate 3 or 4 times, and to skip Enbrel 5 or 6 times.
Wow, a weekly of Enbrel as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So my rheumatologist was really like, "Well, look, very good. You're already tapering, so that should give you more confidence that you can do it." Okay, cool.
Your rheumatologist sounds like quite a character. Interesting.
Yes, really. Well, he's a researcher in the rheuma field. He's supporting research on lifestyle medicine, and he's really advanced on that. And is something.
Yes, another topic. Okay, great. Well, what we might do is we might leave it there. We've really, I feel, adequately covered this concept of prednisone and why it's not I don't refer to it as a rheumatoid arthritis drug. I don't see it as a rheumatoid arthritis drug. I see rheumatoid arthritis drugs are the ones that we're discussed only at the rheumatologist, which are the disease-modifying drugs of sulfasalazine and your methotrexates, your Plaquenils, these sort of things. I mean, these are immune-modulating drugs, okay? And then we've got our biologic drugs and a range of those, of course, that we all know. So those ones I consider to be suitable if they're prescribed by the rheumatologist, suitable in terms of our parallel challenge of healing the gut. And I just see prednisone as this, for all the reasons we've talked about, this interfering mechanism in our attempts to heal. So if you're stuck on it, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast with Cecile. I hope you've taken some notes and maybe watch it back a few times to motivate yourself to talk to your doctor and see whether or not you really should be upping one of the other medications which are more suitable. Or are you doing the Patterson program? Are you working on your diet? Are you exercising tremendously? Are you eliminating all your junk supplements that you don't need, like fish oils and these things that really are wasting your money, and get on to some things that may actually be able to help you to suppress some inflammation in parallel to the big ticket items, which are your diet and exercise, and see whether or not you can make some progress in not being dependent on a steroid, because you will see the benefits tremendously when you're over that steroid hill and on the other side, just like Cecile has done. And that is when healing can begin. Until you're off that steroid, you're spinning your wheels, you're going nowhere, you're doing all this hard work, but the steroid is holding you back. So that is the sort of the message, I guess, in this podcast. And as we've also kept up as a theme throughout this podcast, we're not anti-medication. We're pro-progress. And if a medication, just like your rheumatologist said, is best to minimize and come off, as many do. I've had rheumatologists. I know of rheumatologists that say they don't prescribe prednisone at all because of its effects that we've talked about. We haven't even mentioned the osteoporosis that it creates. It stops vitamin D absorption. And I didn't sit down and create the big list in front of me before. I used to have like something like a dozen list in my head of the prednisone challenges.
We will talk about the 3-centimeter hole in my bone another time then, but definitely I think that was prednisone related.
You developed a hole in one of your bones?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And it's very likely it's prednisone related.
Right, okay, all right. Well, we might get into that as we cover another couple of topics with you. Over the next couple of podcast episodes, we're going to get into some very interesting stuff. Our next one's going to be why diet alone just isn't going to cut it. So we can talk about that in a future episode. For now, thanks, Cecile. You've been so gracious in sharing your story and giving us those helpful information about how you got off prednisone.
Thank you very much.